So recently there has been a resurgence in new music being composed for Epcot, one of the theme parks at Walt Disney World. Since the renowned fireworks show Illuminations was rumored to close for good sometime in 2019, many people were curious as to what would be next for the park. Illuminations ended up being closed and subsequently replaced by the placeholder show Epcot Forever, while details about its true replacement started to come out. Named Harmonious, the new show will be one of the most high-tech nighttime events developed for any Disney theme park and will premiere sometime in 2020. However, something about Harmonious really caught my eye when details started to trickle out at this year's D23 Expo.
So as I said before, Epcot has a unique musical voice, right? We all know that. And throughout the years, we've collaborated with composers and songwriters from across the globe to bring this voice to life. And we are continuing that tradition as part of Epcot's transformation, as our Imagineers dream up a new musical anthem for Epcot. And we couldn't think of a more perfect audience to hear the world premiere of this new anthem. Now, to make this very special moment happen, I'd like to introduce the composer of this stunning new piece of music, Pinar Toprak.
The new theme for this nighttime show is unique in the sense that it is one of the first pieces of music explicitly composed for the park in a while. Along with Harmonious, the publicity around Epcot Forever, and just Epcot in general, has started to highlight something that I think is very important about this theme park.
Music is the soul of the show because music has been the soul of Epcot ever since it began.
The notion of music being a core part of Epcot's identity is something that I find really interesting, and I think it's true. Music in theme parks has always had a varied history, but since it opened in 1982, Epcot's design incorporated music in a way that had not been seen before. I'll show you what I mean. Let's talk about Epcot's musical history.
Fun to be free, to be on the move, to go for a hike or whatever you like to do. All there is to be done. It's fun, it's fun, it's fun to be free, fun to be free.
When it was first announced, Epcot Center had an unusual premise for a theme park. Instead of featuring the fantasy or carnival approach that was kind of the standard after the original Disneyland opened, Epcot Center would instead be a theme park modeled after another one of Walt Disney's ideas. You see, Epcot got its name from the experimental prototype community of Tomorrow, a self-proclaimed utopian city that aimed to combine the advances of the ever-changing digital world with the convenience of easy living. Epcot had always been a part of the Florida project, occupying a part of the land that would eventually become Walt Disney World. However, with Walt Disney's passing in 1966, the idea of building a utopia without Walt's guidance seemed implausible. To put it simply, the idea to use the land for a theme park was more realistic, though the exact concept of said theme park was debated. The indecision mainly centered around Imagineers who wanted the park to have an international theme and those who wanted it to represent the technology of the future. These two concepts ended up being combined, with the park being named Epcot Center as a reference to the original city. By referencing Epcot in the name, Imagineers wanted to have the spirit of the park be fueled by the utopian ideals that the original city represented. For those who are hearing about this for the first time, let me clarify that Epcot would go through many name changes throughout the years. Though it began as Epcot Center, the theme park would have a few different names before settling on the current name of simply Epcot. In 2019, Epcot was given a new logo that more closely resembles the Epcot Center acronym. Even in its early stages, the ambition of this idea seemed a little far-fetched. However, the incorporation of music into the image of Epcot Center could be seen even before the park opened. The night before Epcot opened, CBS aired a television program called Epcot Center: The Opening Celebration. Using the format of musical theater, Danny Kaye led the audience through just exactly what Epcot actually was. However, even as someone who is interested in what Epcot represents, the explanation in the special is a bit, well, watch this.
Just so there's no confusion, Epcot Center is located in the center of Epcot. And Epcot Center is made up of two parts, which is Future World and the World Showcase. It's 2.5 miles from the Magic Kingdom, which is also part of Epcot, which is what the entire 27,000-acre area known as the Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow, or Epcot, or Walt Disney World is called. Just so there's no confusion.
Now, I understand that the joke is that the description is convoluted, but it does touch upon one of those things that differentiated Epcot Center from other Disney parks of the time. Instead of being front-loaded with a lot of intellectual properties and characters that people were already familiar with, the park's promotional materials hinted at something more abstract. But I still love this special. By introducing the concept of Epcot through a variety of musical numbers, Disney sets the stage for what would become the musical identity of the park. By the time Epcot was being developed, there was already a sonic formula being established for Disney parks. Not only could sound be a way to immerse guests in an experience, but it could also form the narrative basis for attractions. If you want to learn more about this history, I'm going to link my recent video on how Disney theme park songs work in the description. Since the park opened, this idea of musical theater style songs being the driving force for attractions was incredibly present. Not only did almost every attraction in Future World have some type of theme song to go along with it, but they were used in different ways. For example, in the Magic Kingdom, attraction theme songs are typically used for strictly entertainment purposes. On rides such as Splash Mountain, the Haunted Mansion, and Pirates of the Caribbean, the songs are used as a way to tell the story in a format similar to musical theater. Epcot operated differently, in the sense that not all attractions used music in the same way. Almost every pavilion in the original Epcot Future World had some type of theme song, with some of them even having two. This approach to theme song implementation was also very different depending on the pavilion. But what makes this different than other types of music for Disney attractions? Well, I think it's best described by the dynamic that the music itself imposes on the listener. You see, in a traditional entertainment setup, the audience is passively taking in information presented by a song. This is most commonly associated with storytelling, with the song providing a narrative that the audience can follow. The construction and effectiveness of the music also make the experience more entertaining due to the easily accessible nature of the music, not only making the story understandable, but also catchy enough that the audience will remember it after the ride is over. If an attraction is enjoyable, then you can use the successful themes as instrumental background music in other areas of the park to have a general cohesiveness. This also leads to Disney being able to sell certain songs as part of CDs or compilations as a way to give guests something to take home with them. This type of formula is applied throughout the Disney parks and in a variety of different circumstances. However, the songs that were written for Epcot Center are different in the sense that they are not only passive. You see, all of the pavilions in Epcot wanted to communicate some type of educational concept. This was often affected by the interests of a corporation sponsoring the pavilion, but the process was educational nonetheless. Before you go typing something about how I'm wrong, let me explain. I understand that entertainment inherently implies some type of passive engagement, but lyrics that inspire and give audience members factual information to engage with breaks down a barrier, creating a connection that is different than your typical dinner show experience. As a result, each song crafted for an attraction had to reflect the philosophy of the pavilion. In a general sense, this changed the dynamic between audience members and the music. Instead of being entirely passive in the experience, audiences were encouraged to engage with the material the songs were speaking about. For example, the juxtaposition of Listen to the Land with an onboard narrator listing off facts about the environment and sustainable farming facilitated a different dynamic than most attraction songs, or even like in Haunted Mansion, where there is music that is underneath the narrative but in a completely different way. Songs like It's Fun to Be Free from World of Motion also highlight this, with the song being a backdrop for what is essentially essentially a historical lecture. This type of approach to attraction music falls under the general philosophy of educational entertainment, also known as edutainment. This term is not new to the Walt Disney Company. In fact, Walt Disney was a huge advocate for the power of edutainment being a way to help audiences learn about technology and nature. Early edutainment exhibitions at Disneyland could also be arguably positioned as proto-Epcot concepts. But that's the thing, music is a great vehicle for edutainment, with a lot of science behind the benefits of music for memorization and learning. However, music was not just part of the edutainment at Epcot. In a park that has many different pavilions for different concepts and countries, music tied together the identity of the initial Epcot Center. In a similar way to other Disney attractions, it quickly became impossible to separate some of the rides from their iconic themes. By enlisting a wide number of notable composers and songwriters, Disney created not only impressively immersive edutainment, but also what I believe to be the most successful soundtrack for a theme park. The songs written for the original Epcot Center are incredibly catchy, lyrical, and really show off the fine line between education and entertainment. There are also some beautifully weird moments, like check out this song by the Sherman Brothers that was used for the Imagination Pavilion.
You are searching for the eye of a singer in the sky. You are standing in the sleep of an early memory.
For someone who did not grow up at the original Epcot but did grow up listening to the Epcot Center soundtrack on a daily basis, I have always been amazed at how strong the songs are as the years go on. Again, if you want to see a more in-depth breakdown of why I think a lot of these songs work so well, I'm putting a link to my analyses on World of Motion and Pirates of the Caribbean in the description. The musical approach of Epcot Center didn't last though. As Disney became more focused on putting their own intellectual property into the parks, it seems to have become less lucrative to have music that strongly links with the pavilions. For example, the Finding Nemo revamp of the Living Seas Pavilion introduced a song from the Finding Nemo musical at Animal Kingdom. However, the way that it was woven into the ride feels sloppy and just confusing for those who do not know the song. Instead, it's just tacked onto the end of the ride with no explanation. And though the main exhibition area of the pavilion addresses much of the original philosophy of the Living Seas, the introduction of a musical element does little to nothing. I think the Frozen attraction is another example of sloppy musical integration. Instead of providing you with narrative context, it is more a greatest hits collection of the film. It sounds more like a commercial than an attraction and brings the consumer back to the passive element of non-Epcot attraction theme songs. I don't think that intellectual property integration is inherently bad though. I mean, I think a good example of IP integration at Epcot was the Circle of Life film, a short film about environmental conservation that ends up incorporating the titular song from The Lion King to create an edutainment experience. This doesn't mean that all music post-Epcot Center was bad though. The aforementioned show Illuminations had one of the most dazzling scores of any Disney show, and the music for both renditions of Soarin' set a memorable foundation for the natural and cultural beauty that you encounter while flying high. Though the edutainment aspects of the park have been redefined throughout the years, there's still enough from the original Epcot Center to retain the overall spirit. This is why I was so excited when they started speaking about how music was the center of Epcot's spirit. It's too soon to tell for sure, but at a time when Epcot is going through so many changes, it's grounding to see a direct reference to its roots. And also, which other theme park has a hilariously dated and factual song about a man being in love with his computer?
You see, my friends, the computer makes life easier. Saves me time and headaches too. He sorts things out, analyzes in a shake. My enormous problem to him's a piece of cake. He's got a great big memory like an elephant. Utilizes knowledge without end. That's why I'm a router for me computer. Everybody needs a